On a peaceful morning, while markets open as usual and politicians exchange customary handshakes, Canada takes a step that the United States never imagined it would dare to take. It is not loud, but it is strategic. This is the type of maneuver that not only disrupts trade deals, but also shakes economies. It's not just about tariffs. It's about power plays, billion-dollar industries, and political personalities clashing on a global scale. The United States felt they were in control until Canada changed the script. And what comes next is about to get nasty. The Spark, a 25% levy on Canadian goods, was announced without warning. The US portrays it as a national security action, citing trade imbalances and the need to defend American workers, as is customary. But make no mistake, this is not about security. It's all about control. Tariffs are more than simply figures on paper. They are economic weapons. They don't strike like earthquakes, yet the harm is almost as severe. $300 billion in commodities pass the US-Canada border each year. We are talking about automobiles, steel, aluminum, and even basic foodstuffs. For Canada, this is more than simply an economic setback. It's personal. Jobs are on the line. Entire industries are at risk. But here's something the US didn't expect. Canada is not going to beg. While Washington celebrates its harsh attitude, Canada is contemplating a comeback. The United States expects Canada to negotiate, maybe beg. Instead, Canada strikes back hard. However, this is not an emotional experience. It's precise, strategic, and ruthless. Instead of arbitrarily imposing taxes on US goods, Canada seeks maximum impact. American bourbon is tariffed. Florida, orange juice is tariffed. What about electric automobiles, particularly Teslas? Direct strike. Why these items? Because they are pressure points. Bourbon enters Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's backyard. Orange juice enters Florida, a key electoral battleground. Tesla, this is not simply a firm. It's America's technological crown jewel. Canada isn't just fighting back. They are conveying a message. We know where it hurts and aren't afraid to press down. And just like that, the trade war is no longer hypothetical. It's real and it's personal. When Canada pursues Tesla, it's not a coincidence. It's a brilliant move in economic warfare. Tesla relies on Canadian-controlled materials: nickel, lithium, and aluminum. These are not just resources. They are the lifeblood of electric car manufacturing. And now Canada is in control of the faucet. Here's the ripple effect. Higher material costs lead to higher automobile prices and slower sales. Investors become concerned. Consumers become frustrated. Competitors begin circling like sharks. However, Canada is not just interested in Elon's, Musk's financial success. They are targeting America's sense of invincibility. Because if Tesla, the symbol of American ingenuity, can bleed, no one is secure. Tesla represents only the top of the iceberg. The whole North American car industry is in danger of being destroyed. Here's something most folks don't realize. A single vehicle part might traverse the US-Canada border 8 times before it's done. The factories in Detroit, Ontario, and Mexico are not competitors. They're partners in a massive supply chain. When the US imposes tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, they believe it will defend American employment. It's doing the reverse now. Components are more costly, factories are slowing down, and American workers are losing their jobs. Here's the irony. Canada understands this will happen. They understand that the supply chain is vulnerable. And while the US believes it is demonstrating power, it is essentially hitting itself in the face. This is not only about CEOs and politicians. It affects small communities in Ohio, Michigan, and Alberta, communities that rely on these sectors for survival. Imagine this: a community with a single significant employer, a factory that produces automobile parts. Tariffs raise production costs for the factory, which lays off employees to stay afloat. Families suddenly can't pay their rent. Local companies lose clients. The entire town feels the pinch. And now for the gut punch. These folks did not initiate the conflict, but they are the ones suffering, once being crushed by it. Meanwhile, the politicians who started this are still receiving their paychecks. Politics quickly becomes dirty, because when people lose their employment, they do not blame foreign governments. They blame their own government. In Canada, Trudeau describes the counterattack as a defense of national pride. In the United States, however, things are different. Some politicians go all in, arguing that short-term hardship is worth it in the long run. Others try to back down, seeing that short-term misery results in furious voters. When voters are outraged, they attend town halls, demand answers, and vote. This is no longer merely an economic fight. It's a political grenade ready to detonate. While everyone is monitoring the car sector, Canada has a secret weapon: energy. The United States relies significantly on Canadian oil, gas, and power. And if Canada wants, it can turn off the tap. Imagine this: gas prices double overnight, power outages in northern US states throughout the winter, inflation soaring. Canada hasn't played this card yet, but the idea that they could is enough to keep American leaders up at night, because energy is more than simply money. It is about survival. It did not happen all at once. It began with a delay here and there. There is missing cargo. Initially, companies assumed it was simply terrible luck, an isolated problem. But it kept happening. Over and over. Parts that would normally arrive in 2 days are now taking 2 weeks, or not coming at all. Auto factories' production lines are being paused because they are lacking a single $5 component. Technology firms are struggling to obtain essential air supplies, watching deadlines fade into the horizon. Grocery businesses are also experiencing the effects. Empty shelves where fundamental products were once filled without hesitation. See? Supply systems aren't designed for instability. They're made to be efficient, lean, fast, just in time. However, when tariffs are added to the mix, efficiency suffers. And now for the brutal part. It's not as simple as turning a switch. You can't just mend a damaged supply chain. It's like attempting to untie a massive knot. One error, and it tightens even more. The US believed it was exerting pressure on Canada. But what they actually did was pull the first thread. Now the whole thing is unraveling. While politicians offer speeches and companies calculate data, the true impact is felt in the same spot every time. People's wallets. At first, it appears subtle. Perhaps your favorite cereal is somewhat more pricey. Maybe your food cost feels a little greater than normal. Maybe the new phone you've been saving for is now beyond your grasp. But then it snowballs. Because it's more than one thing. It is everything. Food prices are higher, gas is up, utilities are up, even random items like batteries, light bulbs, and everyday household items. Everything costs more. Here's the worst part. Wages aren't rising to match. People begin making trade-offs. Skip the trip, delay automobile repair. Buy less, save less, worry more. This is neither an economic theory nor an abstract policy discussion. This is actual life. Millions of individuals are finding it increasingly difficult. Behind the scenes, in offices with polished wood desks and flags attached to lapels, the political games have begun. See, trade conflicts are about more than simply money. They are about power, influence, and control. The United States expected Canada to play nice, to back down, and to understand their position. Instead, Canada is flipping the board, forging new trade agreements with Europe, strengthening economic links with Asia, exploring relationships that exclude the United States entirely. And guess what? It works. While American authorities try to handle the impact, Canada is forming partnerships quietly, strategically, because they know something that Washington did not expect. You do not have to win every battle to win the war. You only need to outlast your opponent. And for now, Canada is playing the long game. While politicians hurl insults, business boards are in full crisis mode. Because here's the deal. Markets loathe uncertainty. What about tariffs? They are like putting fuel on a fire. What about automakers? Ford and General Motors are losing money as supply systems break down. What about technology companies? As crucial resources become scarce, production costs rise dramatically, and retail brands see customers already tightening their belts. Therefore, prices must be raised accordingly. Behind closed doors, CEOs are scrambling. Emergency meetings, late-night calls to suppliers. Shareholders receive frantic memoranda attempting to explain why the figures are falling apart. Because at the end of the day, it makes little difference who is right in a trade war. Only the bottom line matters. And right now, the bottom line is under threat. You'd think there would be regulations for this sort of thing, right? There are. USMCA, the trade agreement that replaced NAFTA, was intended to prevent this. WTO regulations are designed to maintain global trade fairness and balance. But here is the unpleasant reality. Rules are meaningless unless they are enforced. Both the United States and Canada are currently preparing legal action. Trade attorneys are going through thousands of pages of agreements. Lawsuits are being drafted, complaints are being filed, and international courts are getting involved in the quagmire. But even if Canada wins a legal battle, what exactly does it mean? Will it bring back lost jobs? Will it reverse the economic damage? Will it restore the trust that has already been shattered? Definitely not, because legal triumphs do not restore destroyed relationships. In global trade, relationships are important. This was never just about the United States or Canada. The ripple effects are spreading worldwide. Europe is keeping a tight eye on things, modifying trade policy, and searching for ways to narrow the gaps that have been left. China has discreetly stepped in, providing agreements to Canadian firms looking to diversify their exports. Developing nations are using the opportunity to establish themselves as new participants in formerly locked down sectors. And the longer this goes on, the more likely the US will lose something far more important than money: its influence. Power is more than just having the largest economy or the strongest military. It's about trust, dependability, and leadership. And when that falls, it's nearly impossible to reconstruct. So where does this end? The reality is, nobody knows. Best case scenario, both parties acknowledge the harm, sit down at the table, and negotiate a ceasefire. Worst case scenario, the trade war spirals out of control, engulfing additional nations, collapsing markets, and precipitating a global crisis. But here's what no one wants to admit. It could be too late. Even if all parties reach an agreement tomorrow, what about the shut down factories? They won't reopen overnight. What about the lost jobs? They don't miraculously return. What about the trust that's been lost? Gone. Because economic destruction doesn't strike like a bomb. It sneaks in quietly and gradually, until one day you wake up and everything has changed. It's not just about tariffs. It's not only about Canada and the United States. It's about how delicate everything really is. One decision, one policy change, and prices have risen. Jobs no longer exist, and entire industries are disintegrating. Trade battles are not fought in conference rooms. They are fought at grocery stores, petrol stations, and in the homes of individuals who never asked to be part of it. The people most affected are not those who started it. So the next time you hear a politician talk about tough economic decisions, remember that tough decisions for them generally result in bad lives for everyone else. And as this develops, one thing is certain: it's about to become much worse. So what comes next? Will Canada push even harder? Will the United States double down? Is this simply the beginning of something much bigger? Let's be honest, the narrative is far from finished. If you find this analysis useful, subscribe so you don't miss the next installment. Share your opinions in the comments. Do you believe the trade war will spiral out of control, or will cooler heads prevail? Thank you for viewing, and see you in the next one.